Hi, my name's Tim and I am the Tinkering Turtle. Today we're going to show you how to take the rear tire off of your Magicycle e-bike. I've done this video for other bikes in the past, and this video I hope will go just as smoothly. So the first thing I did is I set it up on the rack. To do that, now a lot of people talk about this Bikehand Ebike rack, which will be linked down in the description below. And how you still have to pick up the bike and put it on the rack, which is true. It's 100% true, and it's heavy. But here is the trick. I'll take my stool, in this case, you could use a box or anything else. I will pick the back tire up off the ground with the front tire still on the ground, put the back tire on my stool. That way when I pick up, I only have to pick up the front of the bike to put the seat in the clamp. That takes a lot of the weight off. You're not lifting the entire bike, makes it a lot easier. So that's just a tip for anybody that does have the Bikehand e-bike stand. Now, how do you do this if you don't have a bike stand? Well, it's actually pretty simple. And what I typically do is I will flip the bike over, I'll hold the back brake, and I'll lift the front tire and come all the way over, and I will set the handlebars on the ground on top of blocks to keep the cell phone holder and any of the other equipment from getting damaged. So there'll be a block and then the ground as you flip it over. That works just as well, and you don't have to buy the, I think it's $170 e-bike Bikehand stand. So that is another way to go about this, and it makes it a lot easier. Now typically I would take the battery off before I put it up on the stand. I'll do that before we get started when we go to flip it over, and I'll show you how to do that on the Bikehand stand. Another thing you might notice is that in my last video I had installed a front bike rack. You'll see that that's no longer on the bike, and the reason is I'm going to do a giveaway and send that to a Magicycle owner. Stay tuned till the end of the video to check out the things you have to do to get a chance at winning that, or the front rack. Anyway, enough talking, let's get to it. Today we're going to use a crescent wrench, a wire cutter, and some Allen wrenches. And I also have the key so I can take off the battery. So let's do that now. So I'm going to take the battery off. This is just to take the extra weight off. Plus, I don't like working on the bike with the battery on it, because I will be unplugging the cord that goes to the motor, and I don't want any electrical current on the bike at all at that point. So I'm going to take this off and put it on the bench. Okay, now normally I would be standing on this side of the bike to show you how to do this. Since we are clamping a little bit further back on the bike, because it's a step-through, this will have a lot of front end weight. So when you go to roll this over, you have to support underneath the front of the frame to do this. But to do this, it's quite simple. You turn this, it opens up this jaw. You just flip the bike over. And then rotate that claw shut. Now the bike is completely flipped upside down, and you have easy access to the wheel to remove it. Okay, the first thing I do to start the process of removing the rear wheel is I actually take the back caliper, brake caliper, off the bike. And I do this mostly because when you're taking the tire on and off, you'll have to line up the rotor inside the brake caliper if you have it on. And if you take it off, that's one less thing you need to worry about. So I take it off just because it's easy enough to readjust once you get everything back together. Now to do that, I use a number 5 Allen wrench, 5mm Allen wrench, and you'll just remove these two bolts. One thing to look at is the spacer you have on here. There'll be a long side and a short side. Make sure you take note of that so you can put the brake caliper back on the same way. I've seen people reverse that, so they put the short side up here and the long side down here, and it messes up the engagement on the brake. So just be mindful of what things look like when you take it apart. It'll have a bolt and a washer, or a bolt and a washer. So you'll note that there are two lengths on the bolts. The long one goes through the long side of the bracket, and the short one will go through the short side of the bracket. So just set these aside so you don't lose them. Now the caliper is loose, so I'll just get that out of the way. Now the next thing you do, there's a zip tie that holds the motor connector and the motor wire onto the frame. So you're going to want to clip that. Be careful when you're clipping the zip ties not to clip into the coating on the wire. You will need another zip tie when you go to put things back together. Now this releases two wires. The first wire goes to the brake light. The bigger wire goes to the motor itself. You're going to want to pull that straight apart, it looks like. Yep, there's arrows on the wire. And so you'll pull these straight apart. And then that wire's loose. Now there are going to be a couple things I'm going to do on this side of the bike. The first thing is I'm going to take the chain off of the front sprocket. This is just to give the back part of the derailleur a little bit more movement so I can more easily manipulate the tire off the bike. You see that that releases the derailleur back here. Your hands will get dirty, so make sure that you take that into account and have rags or whatever you need so you don't get everything gross. Now the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my adjustable wrench. If you have a wrench that actually fits the nut, that's fine too. I'm going to take my adjustable wrench and I'm going to loosen the axle nut on this side. So I've loosened the axle nut. You need to take note that there's a washer here and then there's a retainer tab here. So I'm going to also have to be able to take this off, so this will come loose as well. I'll need to do that on both sides. But I want you to take note of what you're seeing here with the washer back here and the orientation of that tab, where the washer is on this side as well as that bracket, so that you can make sure those are in the proper position when we go to put it back on. So like I said, I need to take off this retainer bracket nut, or bolt I should say, and it'll have a washer and a lock washer on it. Make sure that you keep both of those. Actually it has two washers and a lock washer. So I'll set that aside. Now this is loose. We'll repeat the process on the other side. So I'm going to start on this side by taking off the retainer. Same thing, number 4 Allen wrench. Has a couple washers and a lock washer on it. Set that aside. Then I'll take my adjustable wrench, loosen that up. Now here's a pro tip. Take this side completely off with the washer and the retaining bracket. Set those aside. And you'll notice that there are two flats on this. What you want to do is take your adjustable wrench and rotate them counterclockwise slightly so that these flats line up with the slot. That way the wheel will just come right up out of the slots in the frame. If you don't do that, a lot of times this will be cranked over a little bit and it'll bite into the edge of the slot and it'll bind it from coming out. So make sure you take that, twist it back a little bit so it's parallel, and everything will slide straight back up and out. Now the next step should be fairly easy. The hard part about it is the derailleur stays on the frame, so you're going to have to lift this up. And I think to do that I'm going to have to take this nut all the way off, this axle nut, because it looks like everything will get in the way and hit the derailleur, and we don't want that. Again, you have the axle nut, a washer, and then the retainer. set those aside. Now this should be just as easy as lifting up the chain and pulling the derailleur back up out of the way, and then lifting the tire up and out of the bike. So now we've removed the back tire off the bike. We're going to go do something to it. It doesn't really matter what. On a future video, I'll probably put a Tannis liner in there or something, because I do like the Tannis liners. But now we're ready to put the wheel back on the bike. Now, one thing I want to point out when I do this, and some people have trouble with this when they reassemble, is I've got the chain off of the front sprocket up here. So it's down here. That gives me a bunch of slack in the chain. But you'll notice you can also take the chain out of the way when you do that. A lot more than if it was tight, then you wouldn't be able to get it out of the way. And this is important because you're going to have to take this nut or this axle that sticks way out. You have to get the chain on the other side of it to get back up on top when you're putting it back together. So let's start the process of reassembling the rear tire right now. Okay, the first thing I want to show is the wire is on the bottom of the bike. So the ground would typically be up here if the bike was right side up, and the wire is on that side of the axle. And then you've got this nut that will come off, and it's got this tab on it, and that will go towards the ground as well. And that'll be on both sides of the axle. Okay, so you'll pick up the tire, you'll slide it into place, you'll pull the chain out of the way, slide the axle down in, and then right now the axle's kicked over, so I'm going to take my adjustable wrench and I'm going to put it on the flats on the back side of the axle here, and then I'm going to rotate the axle till it lines up with the slot, and you'll see how it just slid right down into the slot once I got it in the proper position. I can wiggle it back and forth, and you can see down here it's at the bottom of the slot. Same on this side. Now I'm going to take the retainer bracket, put it on there, make sure that it lines up. Now I want to say something about this. The slots in this one are at a slight angle to the center line of the bracket. So if you put it on backwards, it won't line up with the hole. So make sure when you put it on, it lines up with the hole. And I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt in that holds that retainer bracket right now. I like that this bike has that. It stops, if the axle nut gets loose, it stops it, number one, for rotating, number two, from ever coming out, even if the nut comes off, which is a good thing. You should obviously check once in a while that your axle nuts are tight. Next thing we'll do is take the washer, put on there, and then the axle nut, and we'll start that on there. Hand tighten that as far as I can. Then I will take my adjustable wrench. Now at this point I want to take a look down and make sure that the gap at the frame and the tire on both sides is about the same, and it looks pretty good to me. And then we will take and repeat the same process on this side as we did the other. Again, you can see I put the bracket on, it was backwards. So I'll put that on, now it lines up. Put the bolt in. Tighten that down. Now the axle won't come out because it's got these retainer brackets on both sides. Take your washer. You'll take your axle nut. And you'll tighten that down. Now at this point I'm going to take the chain, make sure it's properly on the derailleur. I'm going to put it on the front sprocket and make sure that everything looks right. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motor wire that I disconnected. Now this is really important on this one. There are flats here and here. In addition to that, if you look around it, you'll see arrows on both connectors. There's the arrow right there. You want to line up those arrows, which you'll find correspond with the flats, and push this connector straight together all the way until it seals up. We don't want to partially push this together. We want to push it all the way in. Then we're going to take a zip tie and put it around both the brake light wire, which is the small one, and the motor wire, and cinch that back down. We'll use our wire clippers and clip off the excess plastic. Okay, the last thing to do is to take the brake caliper and the bracket that we took off. We got the long side and the short side. You got the long bolt. Put it up through the caliper. Slide the caliper up on the rotor and get that bolt started into the frame. Make sure that you go straight into the frame. Don't kind of kick it off in a kitty corner, because you can cross thread this and then you'll have a real problem. Be very careful when starting bolts like that. Anybody that's been wrenching on parts or bikes or cars long enough, that's a standard thing, but some people don't always think about it. Okay, we've assembled the caliper back on. I've shown how to adjust this in other videos, so I'm not going to show that on camera here, but that basically finishes the assembly of the rear tire back onto the bike. We've got our wire connected, we've got our bolts, our axle bolts tightened down, we've got the chain back on, our caliper back on. I just need to adjust this to center up on the rotor and we should be all set. Now to get this back right side up, I'm going to open up the jaw on the bike, and I'm going to hold it because there's going to be a lot of weight coming over. And then I'll just tighten the claw back up and it's all set to go. So that concludes the video on how to remove the rear wheel and put it back on. The only other thing you could do is put the battery back on and check and make sure that the wheel is running true inside the frame and has power and everything. That's something you can do. And I will need to adjust the rear brake caliper again. But that does conclude how to remove the rear wheel and put it back on. Stay tuned in for a few minutes and I will show you how to enter to win the bike rack for the Magicycle e-bikes. Thanks for watching. Okay, today I'm excited to announce that I'm going to give away the front rack for the Magicycle e-bike. There's a few things you need to do to be in the running to get it drawn to do it. The first thing is to watch this video, the rear tire removal video. If you've done that, thank you very much. If you stayed to the end, even better. Like it if you like it. If you have any questions, leave a comment at the bottom. The second thing I'd like you to do is subscribe to my channel if you're already not. That way you will see any upcoming videos that I do for Magicycle or any of the other bikes that I own. And the third thing, and probably the most important, is to join the Facebook group for Magicycle. I will put the link to that group in the description of the video so you can make sure you're in the right group. I will go in there and I will do a post announcing the video and the giveaway. Leave a comment in that thread on that post. If you don't leave a comment, you won't be in the running to get the free bike rack. I will ship this anywhere in the United States. I apologize. I'm not going to ship it internationally to Canada or Germany or any place like that. It's just too much cost and I'm not up for that. So anybody in America is eligible. That includes Hawaii and Alaska. And that's it. So subscribe to the channel, watch the video, like it if you like it, and leave a comment on the post in the Magicycle Facebook group, and you will be in the running for the front rack for the Magicycle. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.